I'll be talking about starting research from the writing approach. My co-presenters will look at finding sources generally, and then finding Bahamian sources as well, which we know is sometimes a challenge for students, especially when we're doing our research on original topics based in the Bahamas. Okay, so before I begin, what I would like to do is ensure that we all have a good understanding of what a research paper is. So please indulge me a moment as I begin with a little pop quiz, which will be on the next slide. And I want you to listen to the question carefully, and then choose what you think is the best response. Are you ready? Well, I'm going to assume you said, yeah. Yeah. So what exactly is a research paper? I'm going to give you some options. Is it an assignment designed to take up hours of time that really could have been spent catching up on, insert any favorite Netflix film here? Is it B, a paper that tests your ability to cut and paste various sources from the internet and combine as one coherent document? Is it C, an ingenious tool created by faculty to motivate you to clean every closet in your house? Or is it D, a written assignment in which a student draws upon current scholarly knowledge in order to critically present, evaluate, or argue a specific topic or point of view? There's no way for me to see what the answers are.
Real monitoring.
Okay.
So I've already seen a D.
Okay. Everyone's going with D? Okay. All right, good. That's the correct answer, right? And of course, I just did this to lighten the mood a bit before we begin. We know it's not A, B, or C, but I think A, B, and C highlight some of the important issues that surround preparing for a research paper. And so if we look at item A, yes, it is an assignment that requires a lot of time to complete, but I don't want you to ever think of the research paper as just a waste of time or something that your professor gives for you to do just to get a grade. It's actually a form of active learning, and it helps to keep you engaged in the course, and it helps you in the long term as a university graduate. You can become or attain a certain level of expertise on a particular topic. It may help you in your field, or just help you generally to be a more well-rounded person. Item B, we know is incorrect. We're not supposed to cut and paste and put things together because that addresses the issue of plagiarism, which is a very serious offense which surrounds writing for research, right? And so an important part of the research process, of course, is to document the sources that you use. So yes, we do gather information from other sources, and we can use information from other sources, but we cannot present them as our own original ideas. C, an ingenious tool created by faculty to motivate you to clean every closet in your house. Now I'm speaking from experience here. If I have a paper to write, that's suddenly the perfect time to clean the bathroom, clean the closet, do everything except write the paper. And there's a certain, I guess, amount of, I don't know what that is. It might be procrastination, but it's also like this fear of beginning, like being overwhelmed and not really knowing where to start. And so hopefully, by the end of this presentation, you'll have an idea of where to start and you won't put it off any longer. So what are the qualities of an effective research paper? Now, there are many, many different qualities. I just decided to list 4 that I think are very important, that I see in papers that do well. no matter what discipline or course you may be engaged in. And so a quality or effective research paper is focused, all right? It's not broad. It doesn't try to cover too much information, because then what ends up happening in that case is you end up with a very superficial document where you just touch on some issues and it's never really fully explored in depth. And so part of the way we ensure that we have a focused paper is by having a clear thesis statement, and I'll detail that or get into that a little bit later. An effective research paper is also objective, all right? It's fact-based and research-driven, by information that other people have researched on a particular topic. And so it's not personal. It's not, well, I believe this and I think that, and this is my opinion. We all have opinions, right? And we all have points of view, but we want our views to be balanced. We want our papers to show that we've looked at the complexities of an issue, that we've looked at all sides of it, okay? And that requires a certain level of objectivity. So you might be writing a research paper about a topic or a lifestyle or something that personally you don't support or agree with, but you cannot insert your personal bias into an effective research paper, right? You have to be able to look at that topic objectively and look at the facts and information that surrounds that topic. Thirdly, an effective research paper is well supported. The kinds of sources that you use are very important. And, as young people, I think most of the people on here are young people, you all have it good, man. Y'all can just go to Google and find anything. Back in my day, when I had to do research, I had to go to the library, I had to use this thing called a card catalog, okay? Had to go through this manually, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, try to figure out where am I gonna find information on lions? Oh, let me look under zoo or L, right? But at the click of your fingertips now, you can just gather information. But as you are aware, and as I'm sure my other presenters will talk about, all information on Google is not accurate, right? Anybody can have a website saying anything. And so for your research paper to be effective, it must be well supported with what we call academic or scholarly sources. And so these include things like books, journal articles, anything that has been peer reviewed, right? That's a term that you would hear your lecturer or even a librarian use, okay? And that's why one of our favorite websites, Wikipedia, is frowned upon, right? That's not a review source, it's not scholarly, anyone can add information to it. And in fact, you can just probably look up something about the Bahamas, and if you read through it, you probably will see something that's just wrong, okay? And finally, an effective research paper maintains a formal tone, all right? And so it's not written as if you're having a conversation with someone. You want to maintain what we call use of the third person. So you're going to refer to, people or students or researchers, right? Not necessarily, I believe this or I believe that, and definitely not second person you. You should do this and you should do that. Okay, so you're not having a kind of personal conversation with someone. You want to maintain a certain level of distance from the topic. And so a good research paper, an effective research paper, is formal in its tone. Okay, so that's the goal. We want it to be focused, we want it to be objective, we want it to be well supported, and we want it to be formal. So how do we get there? We're going to go through some steps. Okay, so the first step when writing a research paper, of course, is to select and also narrow your topic. Now, in some instances, your professor may provide a prompt for you to follow, or give you a topic that you must write about. And that is very useful because at least it takes some of the guesswork out of the research paper. But in many instances, if you're in a class, your professor may just give you a general topic to write about, or you may have to choose a topic on your own, okay? And so if you are in that situation where you're required to select a topic, what I would suggest is think about your personal interests. What are you interested in? You can explore newspapers. What's current? What's happening? What's going on, right? What are the hot topics that people are talking about today? It might be rooted in some class reading or text that you looked at in class that you find interesting, that the professor didn't spend a lot of time on, that you'd like to do some further research on. And the reason I asked you to choose something that you're interested in is because you're going to be spending a lot of time with that subject, okay? With this research paper, you are going to read so much about this specific topic that you better like it just a little bit, okay? Another approach is to, just think about problems that, around a particular issue, because a research paper can solve a problem. Its goal can be to solve a problem or analyze what the causes of a problem are. It could do any number of things, okay? So on the screen, I have an example of a very broad topic, politics. That's a very broad topic. Maybe you like politics, right? And if you're writing a research paper on politics, that could go in any number of directions, as you can see in my questions, like, why are so many young people indifferent to voting? That may be a topic I want to explore. Maybe if I'm in a class that's looking at politics and the voting process and things like that. What leadership style is required to be a successful prime minister in the Bahamas? That might be a topic that relates to politics that I pursue maybe in a psychology class where we're looking at different forms and levels of leadership, right? Should the age of consent be increased to 18 years old in the Bahamas? This is a hot topic, right? Yeah. This is happening right now in light of remarks made by people in position of authority about the age of consent and who's responsible for what. So that could be something that maybe you're looking at in a civics class as well, or an English class, maybe because English, we look at a lot of different topics. Or what are the consequences of, or what were the consequences of the Cuban Revolution, whether positive or negative? That might be a topic related to politics in your history class. And so what I just wanted to demonstrate is that even though you may be in different disciplines and you have term papers that won't be the same, what you write in English is not the same for what you'll write for history. If your interest is politics, look at the different ways that you could still sort of work with something you're interested with in various disciplines. And that's what I wanted to highlight. So once you've sort of identified your topic, then you want to narrow it a bit further, and you want to maybe think about questions you have about it, problems that surround it, specific issues. And I have a bulleted list here in the middle that sort of shows the different approaches. Any research paper is usually about one of these things: the causes of something, the effects of something, the reasons for something, the factors that cause something, the advantages of something, the disadvantages of something, defining it, the meaning of something. Okay, so there are lots of different directions you could go in. So that's step one. Decide what it is you want to write about. Now, at this point, I want to just note that the research process is not linear. It doesn't start at A and then end at Z, okay? You go in circles. You're at this starting point, you reach a certain point, then you have to stop saying, I can't find any information on this. I have to switch my topic, or I have to come up with a different main point, all right? So it's like a cycle. So we start at the top, we want to choose and narrow our topic, which we just talked about. The next step really is to engage in some level of research to see what kind of information is out there that supports your topic. Usually when you decide on a topic, you may have some ideas about it, right? And so you can use this time of informal research to look at those ideas. And this is when I would recommend maybe using Google Scholar to sort of see what's out there, or using the more established websites, the .edus or the .govs, if that relates to your particular topic, just to get a sense of what people are saying about the topic. In my day, this would mean maybe going to an encyclopedia first and looking up a particular topic just to get a general sense of it and what some of the issues are that surround it. And I think the equivalent to an encyclopedia, I think Credo Reference on the library's website does a pretty good job of just kind of providing very general information that you can sort of learn. It's much better than Wikipedia. It's like Wikipedia, but with evidence, right? So make a note of that one. And you can just do some informal research and that'll give you ideas, right? After that, you might be ready to form what we call a working thesis or a tentative thesis. And that thesis narrows the focus of your essay. And we call it a working thesis because as you do more research, right, after you sort of come up with the ideas you really want to pursue, then you really want to get into gathering those scholarly sources. Because remember, I said that these research papers must be supported with scholarly and academic sources. And that's when you get into your EBSCO and your JSTOR. And stay tuned because we're going to get more details about how to use those effectively. Because I know I'm one of those people, I type in a word and I see 6 million results and I'm like, forget it, okay? Right? So we're gonna learn how to use that properly. So stay tuned. But we definitely want to find these scholarly sources and that'll help refine it. And then we may say, hey, I don't have any scholarly sources on this particular point. So then we have to go back. So that's why I'm saying it's more like a circle and you just keep writing, right? And you keep drafting and you engage the writing process. You go through the brainstorming and the pre-writing and revising and all of that. And this is why it takes time. So when you attempt to complete a research paper a night before it's due, that's just not a good idea. And it's not going to produce a good result because you don't have the time to engage this process. Okay, so let's look more in detail at step 3, writing this working thesis statement, right? In my work in the Writing Center, I see a lot of research. I read a lot of research papers, and particularly around this time of the semester, as we approach the end. And one of the major issues that I see without fail is that students lack a clear sense of what it is that they're writing about. They've selected a topic, but the paper rambles, touching on one thing, moving to another. And it's almost as if the research that the student has done is controlling the paper. And so the student does the research and they find out, hey, this article says this and this article says that, and then I'm just going to throw it together in the paper. But remember, a research paper is not designed for you to provide a report or a summary of what research says about a particular topic. You are still in control of the content of that paper. You are making a case, you are arguing a point, but you're supporting it with the research. And so that's why it's so important for you to know what your point is exactly. What is it that you want to say? And the thesis is what will tell you and your readers and me in the center what that is. So the thesis is the most important statement in the research paper because it clearly states what the essay will be about in the simplest form, right? It is usually a short statement, one sentence, but if you are in an advanced class, it can be a number of sentences, right? That summarizes the main point or the claims of an essay, research paper, etc. It's developed, it's supported, and explained in the body of the paper by means of examples and evidence. Now, 3 things you want your thesis to be. You want it to be focused again, you see that word again. We want to make sure that it makes a claim, that you have a position that is, being either argued or if it's expository, explained, right? And it must be clearly worded. So let's look at a few examples. So this is an example of a thesis here. Gaming has many advantages and disadvantages. Now let's look at our criteria. Is that focused? No. Does it make a claim? Well, it does. Gaming has advantages and disadvantages. Is it clearly worded? Well, fair enough. I know what you want to write about, but we know that this is just going to be too much information for what is usually a 6 to 8 page document. All right. Now, if you're writing your thesis or your dissertation for your master's degree, go ahead. But for the purposes of the courses that you're in here as an undergrad, this will be covering way too much information, right? All right. So here's another statement. More people are playing video games than ever before. Is it focused? Well, kind of. I guess we know more people are playing. But is it making a claim? No, it's just a statement of fact. Okay, more people playing. Yeah, so what? There's nothing else left to say. And so that's why it's important that your thesis statement actually makes a claim. Oh, this must be the right answer with all this fancy spinning. Okay, contrary to popular belief, video games can be beneficial because they may help players improve mental health, develop social skills, and develop critical thinking abilities. So let's look. Is it focused? Yes, we know exactly what the writer will talk about: the mental health, the social skills, the critical thinking, right? It makes a claim. The claim is that video games are beneficial. That's a claim that can be supported. And that's a claim that someone else can refute. And so that's how you know it's a claim, because someone else will say, no, video games aren't helpful in any way. They're destroying mankind. All right. At least the mankind in my house. Right. So let's try another one. Now, in some courses, it is okay or expected to write your thesis in a more formal way where it's sort of announced. And this is another way to just present that, but it's accomplishing the same purpose. This paper will explore the benefits of video game playing, which research has shown improves the mental health of seniors, develops social skills among adolescents, and improves the cognitive function of college students. And so that is also an example of a thesis statement that makes a specific claim that's arguable, and we can see how each point will be developed. And so let's say you come to this conclusion after doing some informal research about the benefits of video games. This is what you found out just by using Google Scholar or Credo reference or whatever the case may be. Now you're ready to go back into EBSCO and the JSTOR to really hone in on each aspect of the thesis. So you want to find out how do video games impact mental health. You're gonna read a couple articles on that, right? And you're gonna find out how do video games help with social skills. You're gonna read several articles on that. And then you're gonna find out about cognitive function. And so this is the time consuming part, right? But once you've gathered your information, you want to take notes from different articles. And let me give you a tip. Just go ahead and make up your works cited page as you go along, or your reference page. Because without fail, you will write this beautiful paper, right? You'll have all your sources cited in the body. But when that 12 midnight, on turn it in is approaching, that's exactly when your computer refuses to let that second line on the hanging indent go to the side that you want it to. You can't remember the name of the article this was found in. And then, your professor is saying, hey, your citation is 25% of your grade. It's really important. So save yourself the trouble and take really good notes, right? Either start your page immediately, with an annotated bibliography or something like that, or write down all of the relevant information. So like if you're using APA style, for instance, you want to make sure you have the author's name, the year of publication, the title of the article, the journal is found in, the volume number, the issue number, the DOI number, the URL, have all of that available as you take your notes. And once you've gathered your notes, you're ready for the next step. And that is step 4. You want to create an outline for your paper. And I say, wait now, when do you start writing this paper? It's a lot of work to do before you start writing if you want the process to move smoothly, right? I mean, you can very well start, researching and then writing and then researching, but that's what usually creates that sort of jumbled mess, and then the paragraph isn't coherent and you're not sticking to the main idea. It's best to plan and outline your paper, decide what information is going to be used and which supporting paragraph and so on and so forth. So this outline provides a map of where to go with the paper, and a well-developed outline will show what the thesis of the research paper is and what the main idea of each body paragraph is. It will also show what evidence or support you will use with that main idea. Because remember, this evidence is used to substantiate your points. And so I want to pause there to talk about just briefly, like the use of evidence in your paper. You should really try, I guess what I didn't explain is a part of the purpose of research is to also gain a better understanding of your topic, okay? So after you have read all of this information about this particular topic, you should have an understanding of it so that you can, speak to it without looking at, am I still on? Okay. Everybody still there? Okay. So you can speak, you can speak to the topic without necessarily just looking at the source and then trying to write, right? And this will also minimize instances of plagiarism. And so you do read and research for understanding as well. And you use that information. Okay. You use that information then to inform what you will say. And so each supporting paragraph will have a topic sentence that makes a claim, much like the thesis does at the beginning of the essay. And you want to explain those points as far as possible in your own words. And then you can use the research to substantiate those claims or to support those claims or to back it up, right? You can refer, for instance, to a study that proves a point that you've just made, okay? And there are different ways to integrate sources into a research paper. You can use direct quotations, but that should be limited because another issue that some students have is just having too many quotes in a single paragraph, right? And so if you have 3, 4 quotes back to back and block quotes, I know y'all love those block quotes because that'll push you down another page or so, right? Use sparingly, right? You can have a block quote if it's really needed, if it's really providing some information that you really can't say in your own words, go ahead and use the block quote. But you don't want to give readers the sense that the quoted material is in control of the paper. And that's what happens when you use too many quotes. But you can paraphrase which means you can put that information in your own words, but be very careful now. If the idea that you're paraphrasing is not your own, you must still cite the source, right? So we want to avoid plagiarism at all costs and cite our sources when the idea that we're presenting is not our own. We want to cite sources also when we refer to specific studies or we quote numbers, facts, details that are not commonly known. Okay, so that's not common knowledge. So you don't have to cite things that everyone knows, but some specific bit of information that is not general knowledge must be cited. And so the outline allows you to preview your essay, and it also can encourage you to think of other areas of development. And so with this example that I have on the screen now, we have a thesis statement, we have an introduction, and I'll talk a bit about that on the next slide. The thesis statement, first supporting paragraph, the detailed example that you use, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, your conclusion, you can offer a synthesis of the ideas in the paper, and I'll talk a bit about that on the next slide as well. So this is an example of an outline that's sort of filled in with that same benefits of playing video games topic, right? So our topic is benefits of playing video games, all right? Now, notice I also indicated who my audience is. And for this particular paper, the audience is parents like me who dislike video games, okay? Now, why should I identify my audience? This is a very good step to take so that your paper has meaning, right? A lot of times when students approach research papers, it's like, I gotta write this paper for this class, right? My teacher told me we gotta write about this, or I need to write on this to get this grade, right? That shows that you're not really invested in the topic or anything like that. And that tends to show up in the paper because then it just becomes some information about something. And the reader is left wondering, why should I care about this? What does this matter? I don't care, right? And so you're not writing just for your professor. Obviously, you're writing for your professor because the professor's going to give you the grade. But you should think of a specific audience in mind because that will also inform how you write the paper and what ideas you'll include, right? I think it also helps with the introduction. When you have an audience in mind, remember the introduction serves to pull readers into the essay and make them want to go further or learn more. And when you have a specific audience in mind, then you can sort of write that introduction in a way that speaks to that audience, okay? So a typical introduction, you want to start with an attention grabber, right? That could be anything from some historical context or background. It can be statistical information that's shocking or surprising. It could be an example of something. It could be a contrast of something, all right? In the formal paper, it's not going to be your personal experience, okay? So, you know, I know a lot of students like to be creative and begin a paper with some, you know, some dialogue going on between two non-existent people speaking in dialect and all that, and that's good for the informal. But for the formal paper, you want to choose a different approach. A lot of students like to start with a meaningful quotation, and that's a way to begin. But you have to be careful how you manage that as well, because what some students end up doing, stick a quotation at the beginning and then just start talking about another point altogether. And as a reader, I'm left wondering, what does the quotation have to do with what's going on in the rest of the paper, right? So you have to make sure that if you choose that approach, it's something that's really relevant, right? So let's say, for instance, you're writing a paper about conflict resolution and the steps that you need to take to resolve the conflict. you might refer to, I hate to bring it up, the slap heard all around the universe as a way to draw readers in, because it's a current event that you can sort of refer to and say, you know, this recently happened at the Oscars and this is what this represented. And then you lead into why conflict resolution is so important and learning how to resolve conflict or violence. But then that's one approach. You might also begin by looking at the gang violence that's happening in the country now, you know, looking at what's happening with young people and how a lot of these crimes or murders or what have you are tied to poor conflict resolution and things of that nature. So there are multiple ways, but I think when you envision your audience, that helps you decide what approach will work best. You want your introduction to give an overview of any issues involved in the subject. So in other words, provide context. You want to perhaps define any key terminology that may be used in the paper that needs to be understood, right? And so that is what the sample is attempting to do. So the student has indicated, first I'll describe what parents typically believe about video games, that they're negative, they waste time, that they teach children violence and all this sort of stuff. And then maybe I'll quote a source that's showing that it can be negative, right? But then I'm writing this paper where I want to convince the reader that it does have some value. And so I don't know what this thing means. So here I'm gonna pick a time. I'm gonna pick a time. Sorry about that, folks. And so, you know, you want to start sort of like very broad and then narrow to your focus, right? Which is looking at actually that, you know, video games aren't what everyone thinks it is. They can actually have a lot of meaning and value to certain people, all right? And so we talked about the thesis before. And so we look at item 2, where we now see a very specific topic sentence. Video games have the ability to improve mental health of players. And this is particularly true for adults who experience high levels of stress, right? And so we see that the topic sentence provides a bit more detail on the topic of mental health that's presented in the thesis. And so that's what you want to look out for as well, that your topic sentences correlate to what you say in your thesis statement, okay? And so items A, B, and C might be some of the main points that will be used to develop that paragraph, and the major source that's going to be used is highlighted there. That's the article that's going to ground that particular paragraph. That doesn't mean that you will quote other sources, but maybe this particular source is the primary source that you will use to support evidence in that paragraph. And then, of course, the conclusion. This person is going to talk about video games' positive contribution to psychological health, personal interactions, intellectual development. And so we have a summary of the points that are in the thesis, but note that it's worded a little differently, so you don't just want to repeat the thesis. And of course, there are other ways to conclude as well. You can comment on the significance of the topic. You can make a prediction about what will happen if we don't address this problem, if it's a problem that you're looking at. You can look at, it can be a call to action, like what do you want your readers to do or to consider or to think about. So concluding a research essay doesn't necessarily mean just repeating or summarizing the points of your paper. But if you do choose that approach, make sure that you do it in a way that is unique from the introduction and the thesis. Okay, because no one wants to feel like, you know, they're sort of being beat over the head to the point in a short paper, right? Maybe in a longer paper, but not a short one. And so that's all I really have to say about starting research for now. I mean, of course, there's a lot more I could say, but they gave me a certain amount of time to speak here. So I'll keep you here for 2 hours talking about research, okay? But we're not gonna do that today. But As some of you are aware, maybe not, I am the coordinator of the University Writing Center, and I just wanted to let you know that our services do exist, that you can book appointments with us and get more one-on-one help with your papers. We assist students at any stage of the writing process. So you may have just a plan that you want to talk about. We can talk to you about it. You may have a draft or a partial draft. We can look at that. You may have your final paper and you really want someone to put some eyes on that to make sure it's looking right. We can do that as well. We offer two kinds of appointments. Live appointments where we talk to you through a video call or a chat feature if you don't like showing your face. And we have the asynchronous sessions as well, where you submit a paper and then we respond via email. And you can book up to 10 days in advance. Now, I will say this is the busy time of the semester. Spaces are filling out quickly. So if you intend to use us, go ahead and book a spot. You can always cancel if you're not ready. But I find that even if you book a spot with us to go over your paper, then maybe that'll put some pressure on you to actually begin so that you can have a draft to present at our appointment time. And so the links are provided. The first link is where you sign up for assistance. We also have a YouTube channel with a lot of videos. We have APA style, MLA style, reading critically, writing coherent paragraphs. I suggest looking at all of those videos before you begin. You can follow us on Facebook because we have workshops that come up every now and then. We'll be having our last workshop for the semester will be on the 14th. It's not really a workshop. We call it Q&A with the Writing Center. That's when my co-coordinator and I make ourselves available to students, and you can just pop in and you can access a specific question relating to the paper that you're working on, any discipline. All right. And we also have a library guide page that can be found at the link below that gives more information about the center and what our services are and what we do. So I will end here and say, I don't know if I have time for any questions that you may have. Oh, until the end. Okay, okay. So I'm being told that we'll save the questions until the end. Thank you so much for your attention.
Afternoon.
Hi, isn't there another segment
Yes.
that comes now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are my students still there? Let's see. Oh,
I
yeah.
see that.
Yeah,
I
they
see
are. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
that. Okay. So I'd like to start off by saying good afternoon. My name is Felicia Ambrister, and I am the Access Services Librarian and the library liaison for the English department. And today, my presentation is on Work Smart, Not Hard, Research 101. And really, I'm basically going to be giving you tips on how to manage your research project. So the great things about writing that you got from the previous presentation, those are going to be so helpful. And then you will notice that some of the things that have been said before, I will say again, but from a different perspective. So we are selecting the right sources and databases and having the really good search techniques. So next slide. We're going to be looking at gathering information, database search techniques, identifying and selecting the right sources, using them in a smart way, making sense of it all, writing, and then questions are going to be at the end of all the presentations. So let's look at the next slide. When we want to be identifying and selecting the right sources and using them in a smart way, database search techniques. So for example, when we are doing our search techniques, what we need to know is what is it we're looking for, what is going to serve my purpose the best. So Google Scholar was mentioned before, also Wikipedia as not being as let's say, reliable sources of information than say going on to EBSCOhost or JSTOR or ProQuest or even Credo reference. But we can use them. It's just that we have to be conscious of what type of information we're getting from them. So for example, we have sources of information that are called primary or secondary information. And I have a definition and application of them here. So a primary source of information is a document created with first-hand accounts of an historical event, original experiments or interviews, and these examples include, but are not limited to, biographical works, like The Faith That Moved the Mountain, the picture we have right there, newspaper articles with first-hand accounts, legal or government documents, for example, The Faith That Moved the Mountain, the autobiography of Sir Randall Fawkes. A secondary information source is one that provides information that is secondhand, that has been gleaned from other sources and not necessarily original experiments or observations, but they can still be useful and valid. For example, we have scholarly journal articles and books. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so we want to know, where do I go to find reliable sources? On the University Library's website, we have a picture of the library right here. We have the EBSCOhost, we have JSTOR, and we have OPAC, which are physical books and journals, whereas EBSCOhost and JSTOR are electronic sites where we can get electronic journal articles, and we can get some ebooks as well. So we can also go to government websites. So that's .orgs and .govs. We can also go to educational websites, which are edu addresses, and then we can use Google Scholar as well. Let's go to the next slide. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Okay, now you say, okay, once we start to find stuff, how do we evaluate them? How do we decide what to use and what to lay aside? So we want to evaluate information sources. We want to sort out opinions, facts, and persuasion. What's the difference and why does it matter? Penn State University Libraries has created this evaluation rubric, which I find to be quite useful. First of all, it says, what is the currency? How current is the information? Is this some information that's already obsolete? Is this something that doesn't even occur anymore, this particular information? Is this, say an experiment that's been disproven? And so I don't need to use it. I don't need to refer to it unless I'm referring to things that have been proven not to be useful anymore. What is its authority? Who is the author or creator? Is the person or the institution behind this particular piece of information? Are they credible? Are they a leader in the field? Are they known in the field? Also, is this valid or accurate information? How do I assess that? Now I have to look, as I'm searching, I might find that you have several of the authors of the material I'm looking at are saying one thing, and then there's one lone author over here who's saying something totally different. And so I have to now look and see why this person is saying something different. Perhaps I can look to see if other authors or other scholars have commented on this person's stuff to find out if this person is actually saying something that's worth listening to. Also, who was the work created for? So for example, if I'm looking at a work, at some information, and this has been made purely for advertisement or to persuade people to buy a particular service or to think in a particular way, then this might not be useful for me, or I might have to look at it in a different light once I realize that it has a bias to it. Also, a point of view or bias. What is the source or the author's point of view? Why is the author writing on this particular subject? Is it because they are just inquiring into it and then they present you with what they found? Or have they a bias and they expect to find a particular point of view and they just manipulate the information that they found to fit that? Generally, as a rule, .com websites have an agenda to persuade you to purchase something. However, there's an exception, which I'm going to show you right now. Can you advance the next slide, please? The exception to the rule is the Digital Library of the Caribbean. This is called DLock for short, and it's at DLock.com. And it holds over 20,000 primary and secondary resources from the Bahamas alone. It is a free resource contributed to by governmental, educational, library, and archival institutions around Florida and the Caribbean, including the University of Bahamas. And this concentrates on content from our region. So if you're looking for information on that's pertaining to the Bahamas, let's say to Southern Florida, to Haiti, to let's say Dominican Republic, or somewhere in the Caribbean, DLock is a good place to look. Can we advance the slide, please? Okay, so now when we're thinking about keeping track of this information as we write, we have our citation guidelines. We, you know, the way that you organize your paper, the way that you set it out as you write and all of that. Is also very important. I can't state this strongly enough. From what the previous presenter said, all of your citations, you need to do your full citations as you get your research, as you evaluate your research, your materials that you find, your journal articles, maybe book chapters, videos, whatever it is you find in to fit your paper, you need to do your citations as soon as you find them. And a good way of keeping track of them is to put them in a bibliography first. Create this at the beginning of your research. Include all of the sources you look at and cite them as you go. Because just like Ms. McFarland said, you would get in a situation where 3 o'clock in the morning, you have done everything you needed to do, but you haven't been keeping track of all of your sources. And you know the stuff, you have gotten it directly from your source, but you did not pay attention to your citation. And that could cost you all of your hard work to go in vain. You don't want to lose any of the benefit of all of your hard research, all of the hard work that you've done. You want to make sure that you have them in your bibliography at the beginning, and as you go, you can remove them. So what I mean by that is your works cited or your reference page, depending on whether you're using MLA or APA. As you write, cite the works you refer to in the text, and then cut and paste your source from your bibliography to this page to ensure a complete citation as you write. You want to make sure all of your citations are complete. You need a pair. The first part is your citation in text as you introduce new information. The second part is your full citation that is going to eventually be located in your works cited or your reference page. I can't emphasize that enough because you don't want to lose all your hard work. Trust me, I've been there. And I don't want to go back there. Okay, can we have the next slide, please? Can I have the next slide, please? Oh, no. Y'all can still hear me?
I
The
can,
audience can hear you.
yeah,
Yes, Mom, we can
we
hear you.
can.
We having technical issues, sorry, oops. Please bear with us. We had some electrical situations going on. So next slide, please. Okay, so if you're doing something very elaborate, you can use a catalog. So there are different little templates that you can get freely off the internet. This particular one is from Grad Coach. It's primarily for a literature review. So you can organize the materials you come across in your research. You can find templates already created for you. Next slide. Okay, a synthesis matrix. The one we're looking at here has been created by Florida International University. This is very useful because this is a way of organizing all of the thoughts that you have found from your various authors, as well as your own, in a grid where you can look at everything all at once. So you don't have to be going back and forth between different papers. So basically, each of your resources ends up with a column where you can record any of the points of view authors have on the questions you're exploring. Then you can choose whether you're going to use quotes, whether you're going to use summaries, whether you're going to use paraphrasing to get the essence of what your author is saying. So when you have finished recording your summaries, paraphrases, and quotes from your authors on each question, you will see that patterns emerge that you can comment on, contrast and compare, and then report on how authors support or challenge your position. So you can see at a glance who said what about the question that you're investigating at that particular point. So you can organize them in the same order that you're going to be writing your paper, and you can do them and put the citation in text in them as well. So then at the end of your reading and summarizing and paraphrasing and quoting in this grid, what you can do then is at the end, when you start writing, all you have to do is just cut and paste. And so you would have already done the work. You would have made sure that it's all in your own words, except for direct quotes. You can also put your introduction of it into the text already in your column as well, so that when you go to cut and paste, or that's all you do, and just go on from there. So it helps to organize all of your information and your thoughts so that it makes it easier for you to see what is going on with the different authors and then how you can engage that. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, there's also another research managing system that helps you with gathering information, recording sources, and making sense of it all. Mandala is a system that helps you to organize materials that you find online. Can you click on the video, please? Right on the actual, not the source, the little box. It should play it. Hopefully, I don't know if it will. Yes, okay. So it's just a brief picture of Mandala. Mandala is a system that helps you to organize materials that you find online. It integrates with your computer's operating system, giving you access to the text of your materials when you are searching for quotes or preparing to create a summary or to paraphrase. So this can be useful, but you don't necessarily need it. It's is more for persons doing like dissertations and higher level stuff like that. I think that the synthesis matrix that I showed you on the previous slide would be more useful for you doing a research paper than necessarily Mandala, but it's good to know about it so that you can start to use it at this sort of level. So by the time you get to your dissertation part, you'll be a pro at using Mandala or an appropriate research management system. So now I would like to go to the next slide, please. Okay, in your writing, you want to use quoting, summarizing, paraphrasing, and synthesis. And quotes are the author's own voice, highlighting and supporting your argument. You can use this very sparingly. Again, use this very sparingly, because if you just fill up your sentences, your paragraphs with quotes, then your reader is going to feel like they're not connected to you at all, or not able to discern what your opinion is about the whole thing, because you just using other person's information, not interacting with the information if you overuse quotes. Summarizing. Summarizing allows you to give your reader an overview of information from one of your authors. So if you say, for example, if you say that it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, that's sort of a summary of the whole book of Victor Hugo's Les Miserables, right? However, that's more like a quote. So a quote can be a summary at the same time, but not all the time. So summarizing allows you to give an overview. So you're just giving the reader an idea of something that went on in a chapter, in a book, or in a paragraph. But it's a very shallow view of the information. It's not very deep at all. So you have to be very discerning in how you use it. Paraphrasing allows you to translate and explain the research in your own voice, showing that you understand the information and that you can now transfer that understanding to your reader. Synthesis allows you to examine, analyze, and weave all of the various points of view and get to the heart of the matter. Successful writing is a clear, consistent expression of your voice that analyzes a broad view of the research on the topic and brings your unique view into focus. There's that word focus again. So as you are reading your sources, as you are now analyzing what they have said, as you now analyzing how they are intersecting with other points of view, or sharing the same points of view with other authors, and how they support or challenge your position, that is good writing. Successful writing is a clear, consistent expression of your voice. I have to say it again, that analyzes a broad view of the research on the topic and brings your own unique view into focus. May I have the next slide, please? That's it. Thank you.
So last but not least, I'm Virginia Balance. I'm the Nursing and Health Sciences Librarian at the University of the Bahamas. Today, I want to speak quickly about finding Bahamian information online on the internet, much of which is found in open sources. I will also cover some of the sources my colleagues have talked about. So I'll be reinforcing the importance of using them, but I wanted to focus more on databases that were open to the general public and not closed and only available to UB students. So I'll speak about library catalogs, journal article databases, document repositories, and finish up with a couple of fun sites which have lots of Bahamian content Next slide, please. Okay, online catalogs. The University of the Bahamas Library Catalog, which is going to be renamed this week, is online and open to anyone to search. It does not include only books, but also includes journal titles, videos, etc. So don't think of it as only a book catalog. When you search it, you can filter to only the Bahamian collection to see what books are of Bahamian interest, or search only the word Bahamas, and you'll be amazed that there are thousands and thousands of books with that title, with the keyword Bahamas or with the word Bahamas in the title. But what is less known is that in the online catalog of the University of the Bahamas is the indexing of two important serial publications, the Bahamas Handbook and the Journal of the Bahamas Historical Society. So you can search either title by its title, or if you know of a particular article or topic that you're looking for, they are all indexed. Now, the only downside to this is that if you do find an article that you want from either of these two publications, they are not in full text. The catalog only has the indexing information, the author, title, the subject, and so on. So you would have to make an appointment to go into the Bahamian Special Collections or to a public library to actually look at the article that you need. All of the University of the Bahamas items in the online catalog are also available in a catalog of catalogs called WorldCat. And this again is free on the internet. And the benefit of searching that is that it tells you if we have it or not, obviously, but also if any other libraries worldwide have the item. And you can then explore other library catalogs and maybe you'll find something in full text there. During COVID, I made an amazing discovery that the Internet Archive's books has many, many Bahamian books in full text. And even better, you can borrow them for 2 weeks, online borrowing. And I was really surprised to find so many esoteric Bahamian titles available in full text on the Internet Archive. Equally, Google Books has scanned quite a few Bahamian items with links to the free full text. In some cases, because of copyright, they can only show you a snippet, but by and large, there's usually a little bit that you can see inside of Google Books. Another sneaky thing to do is to look in Amazon.com for a title, and sometimes they show you that the insides of a book. Next slide, please. Journal article databases. Journal articles, whether in scholarly or popular magazines, are indexed in indexing and abstracting databases. On the University of the Bahamas website, we have started compiling an A to Z list of databases, which lists many databases which are free to search. And we would normally put them on our list because they might have Bahamian content. And next to each journal database title, it says whether or not you have to have a subscription or they're free. So usually if they're free, it has the little open key, open lock on it. So that's another place to look that's free and without having to log in anywhere. EBSCOhost, in addition to the university having an EBSCOhost account, the National Library and Information Service of the Ministry of the Bahamas has EBSCOhost. JSTOR is free to search online, and Google Scholar as well. Next slide, please. The NLIS has an EBSCOhost, as I say. You go to their website, You select the databases tab and it takes you to their EBSCO. And their username and password is not a state secret. It's right here on the slide. And they also have some Bahamian books in full text on the website. Next slide, please. The EBSCO resources that they have include the Caribbean Search database. And if you have kids at home, they have secondary school and primary school databases that you can use, and it's all free. Next slide, please. Google Scholar is a good source for academic articles. Typically, you would only find abstracts to articles, but occasionally PDF or HTML articles are available to you if they're in an open access journal. And the link to the article is generally on the right-hand side of the page. If you look at each entry, below it, there's a little double quotes icon, and you can click on that to get a fully formatted reference in whatever style you want. If you're not finding what you want, you can also click on the item that says related articles and get more. Next slide, please. I wanted to speak a lot more about JSTOR because it's more than just journal storage, which is what the acronym stands for, but it also includes books and primary sources or archival documents. It has a lot of resources, and you can, may I have the next slide, please? You can create an account. And during COVID, they've increased the free limit from 6 per month to 100 articles a month. So if you are no longer affiliated with the university, you can still continue research by creating a MyJSTOR account and accessing the articles, which I think 100 articles is very generous. It's useful to know that with JSTOR, there is no thesaurus. So you need to use natural language, just your regular terminology, but also think about synonyms because different people use different words to describe different things. The same thing, I should say. It has a lot of good resources on slavery and on Bahamian history. And I've always found JSTOR a great source to use. Next slide, please. My colleague Felicia mentioned briefly the DLock, the Digital Library of the Caribbean. It's a digital repository of Caribbean documents, books, reports, newspapers, photographs, recordings of all kinds. UB joined in 2007 and has been adding Bahamian content of every kind as well, and in particular, documents about the history of the university. You don't have to have an account to use this. You just go in and search. Of particular interest are the Caribbean newspapers collection, which includes the Nassau Guardian from sometime in the 1800s, like 1850, right up to 1922. And the Tribune, there are odds and ends in there. It's not consistent, unfortunately. And then the Official Gazette. So it's a very good source. People don't know that much about it yet, but it's gaining a lot of ground as it becomes better known throughout the Caribbean and more people are adding to it. Next slide, please. So 2 fun sites, and of course, after I submitted this, I remembered a third site. But Bahamianology is a really cool site. The woman who runs it extracts articles about the Bahamas from newspapers, not only the Nassau Guardian and the Tribune, but also international newspapers, and really brings history alive. And the other site I really enjoy going to is called Vintage Bahamas. And it's all photographs of and postcards of the Bahamas from way back, of every island, of every situation you can imagine. And it's so much fun to go there. And the site I forgot to put on the slide was the YouTube site. There are two vintage travel videos and the British Pathé collection. And these are wonderful collections of videos or movies taken in the Bahamas in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And they really give you a good appreciation for what life was like back then. And it's a fun place to spend, those times when you should be writing your papers, but it's still educational. So that's it. Any questions? Thank you.
Do we have any questions from anyone in the session? Or if you want to type them in the chat, that's also available.
Maybe I could throw out what's a fun site that the students like to use for looking up Bahamian information? Oh, and I would say also that these two sites are also on Facebook, so you can always subscribe and get a feed from them, which is always distracting.
If we don't have any questions right off the bat, I just wanted to make sure, sorry, I'm having to jump between sharing my screen and not, the power outage was really fun on our end. But we wanted to make sure to mention that there is an event tomorrow evening related. Oh, it's tonight? Man, I'm sorry, I don't know my dates. That is a book launch from author Jim Waller, and it's for his new book called From Africa to the Bahamas. And so if you just bear with me for a second, I'll put that, I'll share that screen.
It is tomorrow.
Oh, it was tomorrow, I was correct. All right, well, if we don't have any questions, thank you so much for joining us today. We also did record this session, so we'll be hosting it on the library's YouTube channel. And I'm hoping that we'll have some really good bookmarks created so that you can see the different sections of the presentation to be able to skip around to something that is helpful so you can refer back to it when you're having to write your next research papers. Really wanted to thank Monique from the University Writing Center who was here with us and bringing this together in like a very collaborative presentation today. So thank you so much for all of you for attending, and we hope to see you soon. Have a great afternoon.